Dona Drake was poised at the top of her fame when she discovered she was pregnant. A moment that could have been joyful, yet instead delivered a devastating shock. In truth, it was a grim revelation that threatened to tear apart the careful life she'd constructed out of smoke and mirrors, the secret she'd carried for decades, one that had propelled her to stardom while gnawing at her soul, would ultimately ensure that what she had achieved would come at a terrible cost. Under the shimmering Hollywood lights and polished studio press releases, Donna Drake was living a dangerous lie. The mounting pressure to keep that secret concealed, to maintain a false identity in an era hostile to her truth, became a burden so heavy it contributed to her early grave. In the 1940s and 1950s, Donna Drake dazzled audiences as a versatile triple threat. She could sing, dance, and act with a fiery intensity that was impossible to ignore. She enthralled viewers with a stage presence that felt modern and electric, and her exotic beauty caught the eye of studio executives seeking the next starlet who could stand out in a crowd. But behind the graceful smile and elegant stage persona was a reality far more complicated than a mere stage name. Many performers in that era reshaped their identities. Irish girls posing as French ingenue, Jewish boys refashioned into all-American heartthrobs. But Donna Drake's transformation was more radical and more perilous. It wasn't just a question of marketing, it was a question of survival. When Donna signed with Paramount Pictures, the studio's press department conjured a public biography to enchant moviegoers. According to their glowing account, she was born in Mexico City to parents working in the restaurant industry, a suitably romantic tale for a rising star in an era that savored mystique. But these claims were fabrications designed to camouflage a truth that might have ended her career before it began. In reality, Donna Drake was born Eunice Westmoreland in Jacksonville, Florida, on November 15, 1914. Her parents were not Mexican nor white, but black, an identity that would have spelled doom for a Hollywood career in a system that ruthlessly enforced racial hierarchies, typecasting, and rigid social rules. At that time, Jacksonville was a city deeply scarred by segregation. Public spaces, education, housing, and employment were all dictated by the color line. African American families faced relentless scrutiny, discrimination, and violence. It was no place to nurture a child with grand dreams, and so the Westmoreland family fled to Philadelphia, hoping for better prospects. Yet life there was not easy either. The Westmorelands had 5 children to feed. Money was scarce, and the opportunities for black families, while slightly improved in the North, were still painfully limited. But in Philadelphia, the family noticed something extraordinary about Eunice. Even as a young girl, she possessed remarkable musical talent and undeniable beauty. These qualities hinted at a future beyond the confines of poverty and prejudice. Her mother became convinced that her daughter was destined for stardom no matter what. It was a bold and dangerous conviction, one that demanded careful maneuvering in a world that prized whiteness as a ticket to success. Already their daughter's complexion was light enough that, if carefully presented, she could pass as either white or at least non-black. Perhaps Latina, a safer exoticism that Hollywood might embrace more readily than African American heritage. Determined to seize any chance for advancement, Drake's mother proposed a daring move to leave Philadelphia for New York City. There, her daughter might break into the music scene and use her talents to build a new life. They enlisted a family acquaintance, a young waitress named Renee Villon, who also harbored dreams of showbiz glory. Together, they headed to the world's greatest metropolis, hoping to forge an act that would catch the attention of talent scouts and booking agents. Once in New York, Eunice Westmoreland reinvented herself as Dona Drake. To smooth this transition, Drake and Villon formed a sister act. This pairing was not only about doubling their appeal, it was a calculated strategy. The presence of a white or presumed white partner made it easier for Dona Drake, a black woman passing as either white or just Latina, to avoid suspicion. The racial atmosphere of the time rewarded ambiguity over truth. By presenting themselves as a duo, the racial background of each member blurred just enough to secure gigs they'd never land if their true identities were known. They performed in nightclubs, vaudeville theaters, and anywhere that would have them. Before long, they started to generate attention, and their star began a modest ascent. Yet one of their earliest opportunities came with a dark twist. A booking that might have looked like a stepping stone into show business was in fact tethered to scandal. The act was hired at a venue rumored to be anything but respectable, an establishment where laws and morals were stretched thin, and where more notorious dealings might have taken place. For Drake and Villon, necessity trumped caution. They needed exposure, money, and a break, and the line between legitimate stage performances and murkier engagements was razor thin. Each show brought them a step closer to the dream, yet also deeper into the precarious web of deception that Dona Drake relied upon to sustain her newly minted identity. No matter what form the early jobs took, Dona Drake's talent stood out. She was captivating, glamorous, and just unusual enough to intrigue agents and casting directors. Hollywood was always on the prowl for the next big thing, the next exotic face that could be molded into stardom. Dona Drake fit the bill perfectly, or at least appeared to, if no one looked too closely at her past. The stakes were lethal. A single whisper, a single revealed document, or a single acquaintance from Jacksonville pointing out the truth could bring the entire edifice of her career tumbling down. The fear that her secret might be discovered at any moment was a constant companion, corroding her peace of mind. Even as her star rose, the strain of living a counterfeit life took its toll. The relentless façade she had to maintain was fueled by adrenaline and terror. She was forced to edit her own memories, lie about her parents, and inhabit a skin that was never freely her own. This elaborate performance extended beyond the stage and camera set. It shaped how she spoke, dressed, and interacted with everyone in her life. Ultimately, it was a punishing existence. The psychological weight of denying her true self, combined with the stress of Hollywood's unforgiving spotlight, pushed her toward the edge. By the time her unexpected pregnancy emerged, Dona Drake understood that the very foundation upon which she'd built her career could crumble. In a time when even white actresses were condemned for unwed motherhood, how could she possibly navigate such scandal if anyone suspected her real origins? The fear and anguish surrounding this bombshell were not just about personal shame. They were about preserving a livelihood and a hard-won public image in a world that afforded her no mercy. The secret life Dona Drake forged to escape segregation and pursue stardom was both a refuge and a trap. While we may never know all the details of how this secret consumed her, one thing is clear: the price she paid was immense. Eventually, the pressure ravaged her health, contributing to her premature death. She died holding on to her secret, the full truth never openly acknowledged in her time. A woman of exceptional talent and charisma, forced to masquerade as someone else just to survive in an industry and society unprepared to accept her authentic self. Despite all the obstacles, Dona Drake's name still flickers in Hollywood's annals, a reminder that many stories of the golden era remain tangled in shadows. The complex layers of race, identity, and ambition she navigated speak not only to her own resilience, but also to the unforgiving nature of a system that demanded conformity to narrow definitions of beauty and pedigree. Her legacy is bittersweet, an echo of a gifted star, whose finest performance might have been the one she was never allowed to abandon, playing the role of Dona Drake, the glamorous Mexican starlet, while the truth lay buried beneath carefully crafted lies. While grinding it out at the Paradise Cabaret, Donna Drake caught the eye of infamous producer Earl Carroll, an impresario known for his scandalous, skin-bearing spectacles. One evening, as the smoky club lights glimmered over the crowd, Carroll watched Drake sashay across the stage and knew he had to have her in his next musical review murder at the Vanities. It was the kind of break every up-and-coming performer dreamed about, but this opportunity came with strings attached. Carroll was notorious for pushing boundaries and shocking audiences with racy choreography and costumes that left little to the imagination. Drake would have to bear more than her soul if she wanted to stand out in one of his lavish productions. Yet Dona Drake was far more than just another chorus girl slinking around the footlights in a skimpy outfit. While other young hopefuls might rely solely on their looks, Drake had a secret arsenal of talents. She could play the piano and saxophone with effortless style, proving to anyone paying attention that she brought more than a pretty face to the stage. Just as crucial was her natural sense of rhythm. One critic marveled that Drake's torso seemed to keep time better than the conductor's baton. This extraordinary stage presence and versatility lent Drake a magnetism that went beyond the skimpy costumes Carroll forced upon her. She was a true performer, and audiences could feel it. But as with all reviews, Murder at the Vanities eventually closed its curtains, leaving Drake at a crossroads. The end of this chapter coincided with another jolt to her life. Her performing partner, Renee Villain, announced that she was leaving show business altogether to get married. Their sister act had not only launched Drake's career, but helped her navigate the dangerous waters of racial passing. Without Villain by her side, Donna Drake now stood alone on the stage, and alone with a momentous decision. Should she maintain the false Latina persona that protected her career prospects, or acknowledge her true black heritage and risk everything she'd worked for? The stakes were enormous. In a Jim Crow-era industry, being a black performer meant facing systemic barriers at every turn. Casting directors and producers expected easy categories: exotic, but not too exotic; foreign, but not threatening. Drake's carefully cultivated image had brought her this far. She chose to double down on the ruse, hoping that fame and prosperity might justify the continual denial of her roots. Going solo was no small feat, but Drake pressed on, booking nightclub gigs and honing her craft. Nightclubs, however, were no safe haven. They teemed with a colorful array of characters, some on the rise, others on the run, and still others deeply entangled with the underbelly of organized crime. It was in these smoky dens of jazz and gin that she crossed paths with a dangerous figure who would alter her trajectory. Lou Pretty Amberg, a Russian mobster with a reputation that made even hardened New York wise guys tread carefully. Tales circulated that Amberg once stabbed comedian Milton Berle with a fork for insulting him on stage. This was not a man who tolerated disrespect or disobedience. Yet in a surprising and fateful choice, Drake found herself drawn to him. Perhaps it was the dark thrill of danger, or maybe just her penchant for stirring passions in the most unlikely places. Soon she and Amberg were an item, and he lavished her with gifts, attention, and the kind of protection only a mobster can provide, at least as long as his temper wasn't ignited. But just as swiftly as she embraced this perilous romance, fate beckoned with new opportunities. Word reached her that there was a part available in a Hollywood production called Strike Me Pink. filming far away in California. If Dona Drake wanted to break into movies, she had to seize this moment. The lure of Hollywood's bright lights and camera lenses was irresistible. She packed her bags, bid Amberg a tense goodbye, and set off across the country. In her mind, this was a temporary absence. Work demanded her in L.A., but she'd return. She couldn't have imagined the finality of that farewell. While she was dancing on sound stages and clinching her Latin persona more tightly than ever, now even adopting the name Rita Rio to underscore the illusion, Amberg's life in the murky New York underworld ran out of time. She would never see him alive again. The brute reality of gangland warfare contrasted grimly with the celluloid fantasy Drake was becoming a part of. In a bizarre twist, Strike Me Pink featured a plot chock full of fictional mobsters and comedic showdowns, providing an ironic echo of Drake's real-life entanglements. There she was, strutting around a set filled with make-believe gangsters, while her actual lover waded through genuine criminal intrigues back in Manhattan's shadows. Meanwhile, Dona Drake's reinvention as Rita Rio intensified. Each role she played, each photograph snapped, further cemented the backstory Paramount and other studios preferred to sell. A mysterious, alluring Latina starlet whose origins were romantic rather than problematic in the eyes of Hollywood's gatekeepers. What Drake didn't know, what no one could know, was how these complicated choices and dangerous liaisons would accumulate and weigh on her soul. She had escaped the harsh realities of segregation and prejudice by weaving a tapestry of false identities and risky alliances. The death of Amberg would be just one more reminder that there was no turning back, that the boundaries between truth and invention were dissolving into a hypnotic blur. Her life had become as scripted as the musicals she starred in, every move choreographed to maintain the illusion. She balanced on a high wire stretched between survival and stardom, between forbidden love and forbidden truth. Each act of reinvention came with its own cost, and each brush with real-world violence cast an eerie shadow over her carefully crafted persona. Dona Drake had ventured into a jungle of moral compromises, her life entangled with gangsters, false backstories, and the ceaseless hunger of an industry obsessed with appearances. She had the talent and beauty to ascend the showbiz ladder, but would this constructed identity hold against the relentless pressures of fame, scandal, and the passage of time? The path ahead promised more opportunities, but also more secrets to keep, more lies to tell, and more ghosts lurking just beyond the spotlight's glare. As Dona Drake's Hollywood aspirations took flight, reality proved infinitely more brutal than any screenplay. After she arrived in California to film Strike Me Pink, not a single whisper of news drifted back to her about Lou Amberg. She was too busy maneuvering through studio backlots and holding on to her carefully woven identity to realize that something terrible had happened to the dangerous man she had left behind. The truth struck with all the subtlety of a bomb. About a month after Amberg dropped off the radar, Drake received a phone call from the FBI. They had startling information and unsettling questions. The FBI agent's voice was clinical, offering no comfort. He informed her that Lou Amberg had perished under suspicious circumstances so grisly that they defied belief. Someone had stripped Amberg of his clothes, bound him tight, and then ignited the car he was in. His death was not only violent, it was meticulously staged and viciously final. Naturally, the Bureau wanted to know if the glamorous entertainer in Hollywood had any insights, any details that might help piece together the puzzle. After all, Drake had been close to him, hadn't she? Dona Drake, ever the consummate performer, now faced an interrogation that could upend her entire world. If she revealed how well she knew Amberg, if she admitted to their romance, would it entangle her in a murder investigation. In fear and desperation, she improvised a story that would hopefully save her future. She claimed to know him only as Mr. Cohen, a mere acquaintance from polite society. She feigned ignorance about his wealth, insisting she had no idea where his money came from. Pressed further, Drake painted a portrait of innocent pastime. They were just two people who shared a fondness for horseback riding in Central Park. Nothing suspicious, nothing incriminating. The FBI, faced with her calm conviction, seemed to accept her fable. With that, she extended the thick tapestry of lies that wrapped around her life, each new thread more entangling than the last. By the time she hung up, Drake knew there was no turning back. She had successfully evaded suspicion, but at a cost. She had reinforced the falsehoods about her identity, her relationships, and her past. Every step deeper into show business, every encounter with danger and deceit had forced her into another compromise. What might have started as a practical strategy to escape racial prejudice and secure better opportunities had now grown into something more treacherous. She was no longer just concealing her heritage. She was actively burying the truth about her personal entanglements with underworld figures. After Strike Me Pink, Drake returned to New York City. She tried to focus on her career, grasping at fresh opportunities. This time, fate offered her something unique. The nightclub where she performed had a nightly show that required an MC, and when the boss fell ill, Drake stepped in. With her vivacious personality, her quick wit, and her innate sense of timing, she didn't just fill the role, she reinvented it. The audience responded with delight. Suddenly, Dona Drake was no longer just another performer. She was the orchestrator of the entire evening's entertainment. This success emboldened her. She could transform, adapt, and thrive under new circumstances, no matter how complex. It was around this period that a bizarre, almost laughable offer materialized, an opportunity so absurd it seemed pulled from the pages of a pulp novel. But this was the nature of show business and the underbelly of nightlife in that era. Deals emerged from the unlikeliest corners, and Drake had proven she could handle herself, both under bright lights and in dark shadows. With each turn of events, her double life expanded. She was the talented showgirl with an enchanting Latin backstory, the one who supposedly knew nothing of a gangster's true identity. She was the witty MC who could command a crowd and the mysterious figure whose past was a locked vault. Every scene of her life was a performance, and every performance a step further into a labyrinth. The Hollywood machine demanded reinvention, and society's prejudices demanded dissembling. The FBI's questions and Amberg's gruesome end showed her that truth could be lethal currency. Fear, ambition, and survival pushed her forward, deeper into a world where reality and acting blurred until it was impossible to know where one ended and the other began. Through it all, Dona Drake danced on, a chameleon changing colors to match the scenery, each new persona carefully calibrated to preserve her career and perhaps her life. The eyes of powerful men, producers, lawmen, criminals fell upon her in turn, and each time she found a way to slip their grasp, leaving behind no more than a swirl of sequins and the faint scent of illusion. As her star continued to rise, the question loomed: how long could she keep this balancing act going before something or someone forced a reckoning? Someone in the industry had a stroke of genius, create an all-girl, all-white orchestra, and place none other than Dona Drake, now going by the Hollywood-crafted alias Rita Rio, in charge. That meant a black woman passing as Latina, leading a group of white musicians on a nationwide tour. The resulting outfit, Rita Rio and the Rhythm Girls, set out to captivate audiences coast to coast. The public welcomed them with open arms. never suspecting that their poised and exotic bandleader was caught in a fierce struggle to maintain her constructed identity. Pretending to be Latina at every turn took a psychological toll, as fans expected her to speak Spanish fluently and exude a certain foreign mystique. Drake rose to the challenge, secretly learning the language and perfecting an accent so convincing that few doubted her carefully scripted origins. The orchestra's popularity only intensified the demands of her double life. As Rita Rio, she had to be perpetually vigilant, always on guard. Yet it was precisely this relentless performance that steered her fate back to Hollywood. Now seasoned by the stage and validated by success, Drake returned to Tinseltown and found herself reuniting with an old friend from her New York days, Dorothy Lamour. In the intervening years, Lamour had become a bona fide star, the sarong girl whose tropical allure lit up movie screens worldwide. Determined to help her former colleague, Lamour pushed for Drake to join her on a new project, one that would cast them both as exotic island beauties, welcoming American men to their shores, and, in the sanitized fantasies of wartime audiences, into their arms. This pivotal collaboration landed Drake in Aloma of the South Seas, a technicolor tropical romance that placed her squarely in the company of Lamour. Paramount Pictures, the studio that had taken Drake under its wing this second time around, sensed the spark. Realizing they had a potential star on their hands, they invested in her carefully, molding her public image as the next Latin sensation. They bestowed upon her a final decisive reinvention. Eunice Westmoreland, once Rita Rio, would now be Dona Drake, a name that dangled just enough foreign flair while remaining palatable to American audiences. Whether the studio executives knew her true ancestry remains a question lost to time. Perhaps they were complicit in further camouflage. Perhaps they were simply fooled by her impeccable performance. Either way, they had their it girl and were determined to sell her to the public with all the marketing muscle at their disposal. No one could have predicted it, but Aloma of the South Seas became a blockbuster hit, even scoring 2 Academy Award nominations. For Drake, it was as though a hidden door had swung wide open. Her next project at Paramount would be Louisiana Purchase, starring the reigning comedy king Bob Hope. If Aloma hinted at stardom, this was her chance to secure it. Hope, apparently smitten by Drake's charms and talent, insisted that she join his next feature, one even more significant in his oeuvre, Road to Morocco. This comedic adventure, part of the hugely successful Road to Rise series starring Hope, Bing Crosby, and Dorothy Lamour, offered Drake a gilded pathway into Hollywood's heart. The set of Road to Morocco brought Drake, Hope, Crosby, and Lamour together in a comedic, exotic tale that allowed Drake to stand alongside Hollywood's heavyweights. Importantly, it also featured something unprecedented, a passionate on-screen kiss between Bob Hope's character and Drake's. For audiences who believed her to be Latina, this might have seemed like a playful bit of cross-cultural flirtation. Yet the deeper truth was far more daring. This was an interracial kiss at a time when such a thing was nearly unthinkable in American cinema. Hollywood, of course, was clueless about the true nature of this boundary-breaking moment. They saw it only through their own lens. A presumably white American man kissing an Arab woman played by a Latin actress. In reality, a black woman passing as Latina had just shattered a silent taboo years before such acts were openly acknowledged or championed. With the success of Road to Morocco, Donna Drake's footing in Hollywood seemed secure. The war had spread its shadow across the globe, and the American entertainment industry eagerly rallied to support the troops and lift morale. Drake joined the patriotic cause by posing as a pinup model for Yank in the Army Weekly, magazine circulating through countless barracks. Men halfway around the world carried her photograph in their packs, never suspecting the fragile edifice of identity propping up that bright smile. Not all attention was noble or respectful. Around this time, a fraternity at George's Emory College honored her with a less than flattering award. They voted her the girl they'd most like to have in the back seat of a car with unlimited gas and no ration book. Such a dubious distinction underscored the precarious balance of fame for a starlet like Drake. She was celebrated for her looks and exotic appeal, even as the truth of her life remained shrouded in secrecy. For the actress herself, it was another reminder that her image belonged to the public, an image grafted onto a false origin story and maintained at great personal cost. Yet at this point, Drake had established herself. She was a performer whose name carried weight. She had worked with some of the industry's biggest talents, crossing lines that few dared to approach, let alone admit. Hers was a Hollywood career suspended on delicate wires of deception and desire. Each new success was a triumph, but each triumph tightened the cage around her secrets. In a world that demanded uniformity and punished deviation from the norm, Dona Drake persevered. She danced gracefully on the edge of revelation and ruin, never letting the mask slip. Though history would remember her as one of Hollywood's versatile entertainers, the hidden truths of her lineage and her quiet acts of defiance would remain backstage secrets. She was living proof that the Golden Age's glamour came at a price, and that its brightest stars often carried invisible burdens. If you found this journey into Dona Drake's secret life compelling, please like this video and subscribe for more stories peeling back the glossy veneer of Hollywood's past, revealing the complex human dramas that shaped its legends and defined its silent boundaries. Dona Drake was turning heads, dazzling everyone in sight with her looks and vivacious presence, yet the shimmering spotlight couldn't hide her lingering unhappiness. After working with Hollywood royalty like Bob Hope and Bing Crosby, she believed she was on the verge of genuine stardom, just one breakthrough role away from the big leagues. But as the buzz faded and reality set in, another obstacle emerged. Critics and audiences alike complained that, for all her charm and allure, she couldn't actually act. Worse still, Drake herself agreed with them. She knew that her talents lay in her presence and personality, rather than in mastering complex character arcs. Yet Drake wasn't just another pretty face. She was a survivor who'd hidden her entire identity, defied industry standards, and gamed the system with extraordinary cunning. She openly admitted that acting ability mattered less than landing the right part and working with the right director, the person who could mold her performance and guide her fate on the screen. But show business had other demands. Great roles and visionary directors were only pieces of the puzzle. Star quality also demanded skill, adaptability, and depth. As she was about to learn, Hollywood's benevolence was fleeting, especially for someone who'd built her persona on unstable ground. Dona Drake was partly the invention of Paramount Pictures, and when her popularity inevitably waned, the studio that had once championed her transformation into a Latin star proved ruthless. They dropped her without ceremony, offering only a meager last stand in a low-budget feature called Hot Rhythm. Ironically, this rejection became a blessing in disguise. On the set of that unremarkable film, Drake met Billy Travilla, a talented and ambitious costume designer who would later become famous for dressing Marilyn Monroe. Sparks flew instantly. After a whirlwind 10-day courtship, the two impulsively decided to marry on August 19th, 1944, in a tiny informal ceremony. But as she said "I do," Drake crossed a perilous line. It was illegal in many parts of the United States for interracial couples to wed, and she was a black woman passing as Latina. Even Billy Travilla himself may not have known her true heritage, a secret that now became more dangerous than ever. To make matters worse, Drake's financial cushion vanished with her Paramount contract, but she refused to crumble. Instead, she proved her resilience once again. In 1948, she landed the second female lead in the satirical comedy So This Is New York, produced by the up-and-coming Stanley Kramer, who would later carve out a legacy with classics like High Noon. For Drake, this seemed like the perfect vehicle to catapult her career forward. Unfortunately, fate had other plans. The film bombed spectacularly. Preview audiences were merciless, with one viewer declaring it belonged in a toilet. Though decades later Martin Scorsese would celebrate So This Is New York at the Tribeca Film Festival, at the time, it did Drake no favors. Hollywood's doors, which had been inching open, began to slam shut in her face. Undeterred, she turned to her next project, Beyond the Forest. She had reason to hope this time. She would be playing opposite Bette Davis, an Academy Award winner and one of the era's great screen legends, and King Vidor, a formidable talent, would direct. Surely this combination promised a hit that might restore her momentum. But the circumstances on set were disastrous. Davis loathed the script and tried constantly to wriggle out of her contract. Her dissatisfaction bled into the production, and Beyond the Forest struggled to find coherence or energy. When it flopped, Drake found herself chained to yet another failure. At home, however, life presented a strange contrast. While Drake's own career was languishing, her husband soared to unexpected heights. Billy Travilla's costume work on Adventures of Don Juan, starring Errol Flynn, earned him an Academy Award. While his newly won Oscar graced their mantle, Drake's film prospects dwindled. At least they wouldn't starve, but success and money did little to soothe her mounting worries. As if the weight of professional disappointment and secret-keeping weren't enough, Drake's health began to falter. After another critical failure, The Girl from Jones Beach, she felt her body betray her. Billy assumed it was the stress of her career, but how could he know the deeper currents roiling beneath the surface, concealing her true ethnicity for so long and from so many people, friends, colleagues, her own spouse, must have ground her nerves to dust. Eventually, doctors diagnosed her with a form of epilepsy. It was a sobering reminder that stress, secrets, and relentless vigilance exacted a steep physical toll. Then another twist arrived, laden with both joy and dread. Drake discovered she was pregnant. Under normal circumstances, this might have offered hope, a new chapter to cherish. But for a woman passing as Latina while truly being black, how could she not fear what her newborn's features might reveal about her hidden past? In a world that measured status, success, and even personhood by race and appearance, the pregnancy threatened to blow her carefully constructed lie apart. Would her child's skin tone, hair texture, or facial features betray the secret that had defined Drake's life and career? As she grappled with this new reality, the stage on which Drake performed, the glitzy sets, the orchestrated laughter, the glamorous illusions, began to feel more like a trap than a refuge. She twisted herself into countless shapes to survive in Hollywood's unforgiving climate. She tested the limits of reinvention, thriving in some ways and failing in others. Now, with a child on the way, the stakes grew perilously high. Donna Drake stood at a crossroads. Would the walls she'd erected around her true self come tumbling down? Or would she find a way to shield her child from the crushing weight of her secrets? In the coming years, she would have to fight not only for her place in a fickle industry, but also for the future of a family founded on love, but layered with deception. If you found this glimpse into the tangled threads of Dona Drake's life compelling, consider liking this video and subscribing for more explorations into the hidden chapters of Hollywood's golden age. Beneath the polished image of stardom lay countless untold stories, complex, harrowing, and profoundly human. Reminders that the brightest lights often cast the darkest shadows. Dona Drake counted the days with quiet terror as she approached her due date. In 1951, she gave birth to Nia Travilla, and to her profound relief, no one raised a single eyebrow about the baby's complexion. The perilous moment passed without incident. Drake took time away from Hollywood to embrace motherhood, though she likely never stopped glancing over her shoulder, aware of how fragile her constructed identity truly was. When she finally returned to work, she landed a role in the film Noir Kansas City Confidential. Though her part was minor, the movie became a box office success, giving Drake a taste of vindication after countless disappointments. For a moment, it might have seemed that she had outpaced her husband, Billy Travilla, in their silent race for Hollywood glory. But such victories were fleeting. Travilla's career as a costume designer was soaring to new heights. He had begun working almost exclusively with none other than Marilyn Monroe, Hollywood's ultimate bombshell. He costumed her in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes and The 7-Year Itch, including that now iconic white dress that floated flirtatiously over a subway grate and seared itself into cinematic history. For Drake, who had scraped and clawed to carve out a place in a viciously competitive industry, watching her husband bask in the glow of Monroe's star power was a brutal reminder that fame and fortune often show no mercy. To make matters worse, Travilla had developed a peculiar hobby that plagued their home life. He didn't collect postcards or fine china. He collected live birds, dozens upon dozens of them, fantails, cockatoos, finches, until their household boasted nearly 100 feathered creatures. The chaos and noise made Drake's already strained life even more tense. Perhaps it was this mounting stress, or perhaps the widening gap between their careers, but by 1956 the fairy tale had crumbled. Drake and Travilla separated, though they agreed to remain legally married for the sake of their daughter, Nia, and to keep the peace in a turbulent world. They tried to maintain a united front. 4 years after their separation in 1960, Travilla appeared on Groucho Marx's game show, You Bet Your Life. He introduced Drake on stage to model one of his dresses, but the encounter felt awkward and stiff. When Marx asked Drake about her film roles, she seemed lost, unsettled. The camera caught a glimpse of a woman whose confidence had waned, who carried secrets that weighed her down. The tension was palpable, and her discomfort told a silent story of internal battles and private compromises. As the 1960s rolled on, Drake's life continued to unravel. Work dried up, her health declined, and her epilepsy flared amidst ceaseless anxiety. She had lived for years inside a fortress of lies, passing as Latina to avoid the cruel fate society reserved for black actresses. The strain of concealing her true heritage, of constantly fearing exposure, exacted a heavy toll. Eventually citing mental health concerns, Drake made a devastating choice. She relinquished custody of Nia, giving her daughter over to Travilla's care. One can only imagine the heartache of that decision, the sorrow of a mother forced to surrender the child she loved to protect both of them from the fallout of hidden truths. Drake receded from public view, each passing year dimming the memory of the star who once dazzled audiences and shared the screen with Hollywood legends. Her last public appearance riding in the 1986 Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade was a brief, bittersweet reminder that she had once stirred excitement and intrigue. On June 20th, 1989, Donna Drake passed away from respiratory failure and pneumonia. If her life had been a performance, the curtain now fell on her final act, leaving behind unanswered questions and lingering regrets. Had the fame, the carefully curated persona, been worth the unrelenting stress of living a lie? To understand Drake's desperate gambit, we must consider the brutal reality of her time. Interracial marriages were illegal in many places. Interracial friendships even frowned upon. Black actresses were typically cast as maids, cooks, or comic relief, roles that offered scant prestige or career advancement. Drake's ambition collided head-on with a society drenched in prejudice. She took the only road she believed led to stardom, forging a false identity to navigate an industry that refused to see her true worth. The consequences were steep. Because Dona Drake concealed her black heritage so effectively, history has struggled to piece together the details of her origins. We know little about her parents, who might have watched her rise and fall from a painful distance. How did they feel, unable to publicly celebrate their daughter's accomplishments? Did they ever attend her film premieres, hidden in the crowd, both proud and wounded, forced into a clandestine role in her life? Each triumph Drake enjoyed came at the expense of her family's visibility, their pride muffled beneath Hollywood's rigid expectations. In the end, Drake's story is a cautionary tale about the cost of survival in a world unwilling to acknowledge the humanity of those it deems other. She managed to secure a measure of fame, but at a punishing price. Her struggle reveals the complex, often tragic dimensions of Hollywood's golden age, the luminous marquee lights that hid deep shadows, the stars who contorted themselves into shapes they never chose, and the relentless demands of a myth-making machine indifferent to the personal cost. If you found Dona Drake's story compelling, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more explorations into Hollywood's hidden histories. Beneath the glamour and glitter, behind the studio-engineered personas, lie real human lives, intricate, painful, and instructive. Dona Drake's legacy endures as a reminder that no amount of fame can truly erase who we are or alter the painful truths society compels us to hide.